Well, you know it helps if you open up the little door. Hi, guys. It's Blackie. Woo. Oh, yeah. Dry sinuses. Isn't it just a joy to be in a house with heat going all the time? Hiram. Hello, brother. How you doing? Ah. Yeah, we had the cold snap, went down to 17, and now it's warmed back up a little bit. So the sinuses are having a field day. Azrael, good evening. Gordon, hello. Jay's Modern Bushcraft. Yep, it's time for another Thursday night. James, good evening. Gunsmith, howdy. Diane, hello. Jared Oliver, hello. -20 in Wisconsin. Yeah, it got pretty rough up along the border up there. Keep all, good evening. Yeah, New York's cold. Y'all are going to get it. It's going to hook around. It's just the temperature now has jumped up to 50, 55 today, and it's going to drop back down to, I think, 28 or something like that tonight. It's not be nearly as cold as it was last night. And then we're going to have like 2 warmer days, and then the temperature is going to drop again. So it'll be another wave coming through, which is welcome to winter. Jared, cool. Yeah, Kentucky in March. I'm going to be at that event. Looking forward to it. Reinhardt, good evening. Ronald, good evening. Christopher, hello. Hello, Bob in Cincinnati. Jay Martin. Okay, cool. Benton, yeah, the hoodie video I got to give to Trinity. You're going to be seeing, guys, I'm going to be doing some gear reviews. Now, I'm not a gear review channel. But on one hand, you've got this manufacturer with a lot of these high dollar things. They're saying, Blackie, we want you to do a review. And I'm going, I get this. And then when I get done with it, I can give it away as a prize at my gathering. So that's what Blackie's doing. I mean, they are saying, hey, you want to do a review? And some of you actually want to see, I want to take a look at this hoodie. And Trinity wanted one. Okay, let's get one and give it a try. So I got one, took a look at it, did the review on it. And now I'll be boxing it up and shipping it off to Trinity. But I did a deal with Blue Eddy. They contacted me, and I've done Blue Eddy big power cells. And so they're wanting to send me another one to do a review on. And I said, okay, I understand. I'll do the review. But when I'm done with it, it's going somewhere else. And they said, sure, great. So that's what Blackie's doing. I'm letting some of these, because, guys, I get 200 to 300 a month of these companies saying, Blackie, will you do this or let us send you that? I'm not a gear review channel. I will review some gear if I think it's might be worthwhile. But at the same time, that's just not my thing. But at the same time, if I can get really good stuff to give you to y'all as prizes, kind of a win-win for everybody, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but that's where I'm coming from. Because I don't need 99% of stuff I don't need, but Keep all, good evening. Okay, let's see where we're at. Let's see, Ronald Green, Christopher Chapman, hello. I said Bob, okay, let's see, second way, I'm catching up now. All right, Rhett McCory, hello to Mississippi. 2020, good evening. David. Neil, hello to New Zealand. You're way over yonder. It's summertime for you. Yeah, Mr. Johnny, we're going to have a fairly cold winter with these waves coming through. Buckeye 80, good evening. John Kennedy, good evening, sir. Hope you're doing well. Outback Owl, good evening to Australia. Happy New Year to you as well. Michigan Silverback, hello, Blackie. Got up to 18 the other day, was able to woods walk the dog. Awesome. Kent Aldridge, good evening. I was in the hospital last week, missed you. Pneumonia got me. Sorry to hear about that. Hope you get better. Yeah, John Kennedy, gather prizes. Yeah, it's a way. I mean, they're sending me this stuff, wanting me to do a review, and why not do it and do it to give gear to you guys, at the gathering. Everybody knows at my gathering, we have a blanket that I tell anybody wants to donate gear, bring it to the blanket. And any old gear I've got that I want to pass on, we put it on, we draw lots, and whoever gets whatever. And so I've got some stuff that's going to be coming in and I'm going to donate. Now, not everything. So if you see it on my channel, don't mean it's going to automatically. But that's where Blackie's coming from with this. All right, let's see. Common Sense Karen, good evening. Bears in the house. Date night. Have fun with the missus, sir. Yeah, Jay Modern. I don't do reviews for the most part. I have done some in the past, but it's certainly not the focus of my channel. But at the same time, especially like that bearskin hoodie, everybody was talking about it and Trinity wanted one. Is it worth the money? I don't know. Let's get one. Let's find out. Fairly well made. I was impressed with the quality of it, and it was warm. So I'll send it up to her. She's up there in Kentucky. Tiny Titan, thawing out, Oregon. Yeah, I heard y'all got a pretty good dose up there. Oh, yeah, Gray Wolf. You came up to almost freezing. Yeah, when we get the cold, it's going to suck moisture up on your side. So you're going to have a relatively mild, warm winter, and lower 48 will get the cold. I know, kind of wompy, ain't it? Old Miner, good evening. Tom Wheeler, hello. George, good evening. John Kennedy, the spring meetup will go from April the 8th till April the 14th. And for those that are wanting to know about the Silver Wolf class will be on that weekend before. And I will be publishing a video between now and the 1st of February, because that's when we're going to make the official announcement. My instructors and I are finalizing now what classes we're going to be teaching, so I can give you a list of the classes and a little synopsis of the classes that's going to be taught this, so you can kind of help make up your mind if you want to come to it or not. But that will be the Silver Wolves thing. That'll be the first weekend. That will start on Friday and run through Sunday, and then Monday begins my gathering from there on. So I'm going to be in the woods about 2 weeks. It's going to be fun. Gordon, good evening. Oh, yeah, Gordon, your deer season's over already. Ours is still going until the end of this month. Maybe even 1st of February. I know till the end of this month. Backwoods Rambler, good evening. Yeah, for many years was a group that I was with. The very last weekend of deer season was the first weekend of fish camp. And we'd go to this favorite place we used to go, and it has a big lake on it and a big old clubhouse, and we would go and fish and etc. Well, there's also the guys that hadn't got a deer yet, and they're wanting to hunt. And we're acting the fool and cutting up and making all kinds of racket down there at the lake, and they'd get mad at us. And we go, hey, if you ain't got it by now, you could start in October, and you ain't got it by now, come on, time for fishing. And we'd be bass fishing and stuff like that. So a lot of times down here with us, that once you get in February and you get them warm days in February sometimes, depending on several conditions. But if it hits just right, them bass act like it's spring, boy. They'll be nailing them because they're trying to fatten up. They're going to spawn later on, but they're trying to fatten up. And so them warm days, they'll come up in that shallow and they'll hit top waters and stuff. And it can be real interesting fishing. Buck 112, good evening. North Carolina Piedmont, good evening. Backwoods Rambler, Blackie, have you ever tried military waffle? Military waffle. what I'm wearing right now. Started out this morning, it was pretty cold. I just ate and took it off all day. They work well, but you need a top layer on it. That's the reason in the video that'll be posting tomorrow, I'm talking about layers. And this shirt has got a high polyester count in it. So it looks and kind of feels like cotton, but it's not. It's actually a heavy polyester blend, and it's hard to blow air through it. So putting it on top of that waffle helps trap the heat better. Craig, good evening. Yeah, the Bear and I are going Sunday. We're going to do a little scout looking, see if we can find something to deer or hog. I'm wanting to hog hunt, so I'm going to be toting the cap and ball revolver. I would love to get a hog with my dragoon. And so he's going to be toting something else, and we're going to ease around the edge of his place and see if we can cut some fresh sign, etc. I'm going to take the camera, but we'll see how it goes. John Loudermilk, good. Yeah, bring the boat. I am planning at this time, if life goes right, to bring my canoe this year, and I intend to get out there. I'm going to be there so long. I plan on get out there and do some fishing while I'm there at the thing after the class, and during that week while I'm waiting for people to show up and etc. Because as soon as I say we're having my gathering, I can get you can bet that Jonathan Frisbee and Chris is going to be there. So they'll probably show up Monday. And so I'll have somebody sit and talk to them. Pink will probably show up. And 3 or 4 of us will be sitting there talking and etc. Yeah, Jay's modern. That lack of a trap door does make life a little difficult. Waypoint Survival. Good evening, sir. Thank you for dropping in. Two Waters, good evening. Harold, hello to Virginia. 30 degrees and 4 inches of snow. Yep. Okay, Johnny, is 7-shot too big for quail and dove out of a 20 gauge if you can't find 7.5 anywhere? Make sure that 7-shot is probably steel shot. Down in my area, the only time I ever see just 7 is a steel. Not necessarily bad, but just understand. It's not too big, especially if you've got a shotgun that's got more of an open choke, so your pattern's going to spread out, but I wouldn't be using it in a full choke on quail because they just blow them to pieces. John Loudermilk, we're going to be asking $300 for the class, and we have not opened up sign up yet. That's the reason I'm going to be able to publish the list. And there's going to be 16 classes, 4 of which will be some form of hands-on class. So it's not going to be just instructional stuff. There's going to be 4 classes that's going to be hands-on, where you're going to be making something or doing something. So it's going to be 16 classes. And like I said, we're finalizing now with my instructors who's teaching what class and when. I've got a board I'm penciling everybody in. Once I've got that, and each of the instructors has created a little synopsis so we can put down what that class will entail, I will be doing a video explaining it, going down the class list, telling everybody what would be there and required, etc., and opening the door for sign up. I'll let everybody know when that video will be coming up, but it will come up before the end of this month. So I got like 2 weeks or less to get it done. So just hang in there. It is coming. Charles Martin, thank you very much. Lewis, well, thank you very much. Hope you do good in Texas. Johnny, modified choke, you should be okay. It'll spread out fairly quickly. T-Board, good evening. No, John Loudermilk, you're right on time. I've already published a video last weekend on Rumble on my account talking about the muzzle loading flintlock shotgun. I got my 20 gauge, and I just did an introductory of it. I've shot the next one, which is talking about shotguns and shot and etc. That will be posting this Saturday on my Rumble account. And then next Saturday, everything goes right, I will be shooting the heavy shot loads of buckshot and big round ball out of the 12 gauge percussion and doing that. And that'll be publishing next week. So I'm doing a 3-part or 4-part series right now on muzzleloading shotgun on my Rumble account. And then I'm going to go back to doing pistols or might bring up the rifles again. We'll see. I'm going to keep it going. I'm getting better response over there and less problems from this website. Paul, are the first Silver Wolf patches a go or a no-go? They're a no-go with that embroidery on it. We will be doing a Silver Wolf patch. I've got that logo. And we're in the process of talking to them of creating those patches, a bigger block, so the price will come way down. Because it was going to be $300 for 20 patches, or you can get, I think it was 50 patches for $150. And then I'm going to get somebody local to, which I've already talked to a lady over here who has a local embroidery machine, high quality, professional stuff. She does it for the military over here at the base. And taking those patches that'd be Silver Wolf and adding first pack and then contact you guys. Still got the contact information for all of the first pack and saying, here's your patch. So it's a no-go for it all by itself, but I am not completely done with that. And guys, I'm sorry. I'm one person and I'm going 40 dang ways at the same time. I kept up for the last 3 months and I'm working around 50 to 60 hours a week of doing videos, talking to manufacturers, all of this stuff. I start my day at about 7 in the morning and I'm rarely done before 1 a.m. every day. And I'm sorry I haven't been able to get the patches to you faster, but I'm just doing the best I can. Outback Owl, do I need to email you for the Master Woodsman series? Okay. My Master Woodsman series concluded, but if you're talking about you were working your way through them, yeah. Email me and tell me what have you got up to. And I still have all of them. I can send them to you. See, but I have quit doing new ones. Again, I had to drop something because I got so much in the fire. And this was to create my book. And so I have completed that. And that was well over a year worth of videos. So I will be doing it. But just email me at the, or holler at me on Facebook or email me at downanddirtywoodscraft with an S at gmail.com. And tell me who you are. Tell me what you worked through and to what point are you. What was the last video you got? And I can go up the list and get it and start handing you the next ones. Thank you, Paul. Charles, at times I think about that. I mean, it gets to be where you're doing nothing but all day, every day. And the phone ringing off the hook. And I go, I need to just take a week off. Just say, and I'm gone. But when I do, there'll be this many emails. Oh my God. When I went and did my gathering last fall, I made sure all my emails was cleared out. And when I got back after, I think, 5 days, I had a little over 700 emails. And it's people that are asking questions, people that are needing information from me back and forth. I'm a one-man show. And so I had to go through 700 emails, as well as keep doing my videos. So you still got to do 3 videos a week. You got to do all them editing. And I'm helping Bear to put up his videos and playing cameraman for him. And take the wife back and forth to work, and do all the cooking and cleaning. I thought retirement was going to be fun. Yeah. Gray Wolf, yeah, 7 hours. Y'all be doing some night tracking videos. Yeah, I hear you. What was it that Arnold Schwarzenegger said? He said, there's 18 hours in a day, and it's how you do it. And he said, okay, I can see you guys in the crowd going, whoa, 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 whoa. I need more than just 6 hours of sleep. He said, well, sleep faster. Yeah. So I stay busy. I'll put it to you that way. Yes, sir, Tibor, I sure am. Rex Storm, if you're wanting one of my haverstacks, and I think I got 3 left in this coming run that will be mailed out 1st of March, email me at Down and Dirty Woodscraft. Let's see if I got it written down. There it is. Down and Dirty Woodscraft at gmail.com. And say, put me on the list for the haversack, and I'll send you the payment information and everything. Oh. Anybody that wants them, just like I said, I got a couple left. I'll have to look at the actual list. There are 3 left of the haversacks right now. And Jonathan Gable, good evening. And I'll put you on the list. I'll send you the PayPal information. You pay, that locks you in. They're being created right now. They're supposed to be to me about 4 weeks from now, right at the end of February is when they're supposed to show it to me, and then I'll start mailing them out. And so if there's any kind of delay or whatsoever, it will be 1st of March. They'll be coming to you. But that's the game plan. Kodak, you're here, though. That's the important thing. Common sense carried, pretty much. Haas, hello to Colorado. Y'all got a little snow, too, didn't you? Ground fog, hello. If you were planting some useful cover crops and maybe some trees, how concerned would you be about non-native invasive species? If the land is my land and I can plant whatever I want on it, I would not be. If that land is somehow attached to a federal wetland, federally protected, whatever, I would be very concerned about it because of that. They had a case down here that I knew somebody fairly well about. A young man was planting pot. He got him a pretty little empire going. And he had him about, I think, 20 or 25, 30 plants, big plants. And so they knew if they busted him, they'd just be busting him on pot, and he'd probably walk because somebody he was attached to was fairly powerful politically. But literally on the other side of the creek began part of a national forest. And so they just went out there in the out season and they cut out and cleared out of space. Sure enough, he took the bait and he jumped over the next spring and he planted in the national forest. And they didn't arrest him for pot. They arrested him for introducing an invasive species. And they sentenced him to 35 years. for putting an invasive species, non-native invasive species, intentionally into a national forest. They sentenced him to 35 years. So it depends on what the land is. If it's me and my land, I ain't that worried about it as long as it's not something that's going to go haywire like kudzu. On the other hand, if it is the land is somehow regulated, I would be very concerned about that. Gray wolf. T-Bor, I completely agree with you. I love chaos in my life. It's just I do need a vacation from time to time. 2 waters, you got about 1.5 inches of snow in western Kentucky. Cool. Well, Michigan Silverback, thank you very much. That's the whole point of me doing this, is try to help people pass on the knowledge and hope motivate them to be able to pass it on to the next generation. I don't own this. This was passed on to me. There are some things I came up with, but that's just like a recipe your grandmother gets you and you figure how to change. Well, I put a little bit of this and it tweaked it a little bit, but it's still grandma's recipe. It was handed down to me and I'm trying to hand it on to y'all. That's the only purpose I got in it. That's my retirement, is to do this. Yeah, Gray Wolf, that very possible if it can survive in that environment. 8 to 10 inches in Ohio. That's going to be fun. Gordon, Blackie, does anyone still make a muzzleloader that can change from flintlock to percussion cap? If you had, well, the famous one was the Dixie Gun Works Southern Mountain Rifle, which I have one. And it was because they used the same lock plate dimension for the flint as well as the percussion. And then you would simply screw the drum in where the flash hole insert went on the barrel. For the flintlock, you could unscrew that, screw in the drum, put the lock on, and it's percussion. It can be done on just about any gun. If you get a gunsmith, you start with a flintlock and you tap the barrel to take one of the large flash hole inserts into it. It'd be the size of the drum. Okay. And then you would simply have to have a second lock that would fit into that mortise. So you'd have to have the percussion and flintlock using basically the same plate. I'd contact Dixie. Maybe they still got some of those laying around as extra parts. I'd talk to Track of the Wolf or Log Cabin Shop, any of them. It was a common idea back in the 80s and 90s. Today it's kind of forgotten. Nobody wants to do that. But I'm sure that there's somebody that could easily fabricate that up for you and just take a flintlock and convert it to percussion and back and forth just by screwing in, screwing out those two inserts. It'll kill. Blackie, do you have a suggestion for a 36 caliber load for slaughtering a nighthawk? Yeah, I would talk about one of the conicals. Definitely a conical, and I'd use a full cylinder load on it. You know, whatever I could get underneath it for power. I wouldn't worry about a wad. And to get the maximum penetration, the deepest thing. Also, familiarize yourself with a hog's anatomy. It is not like a lot of the others. A hog's heart is further forward than you think. And a lot of people think that, well, I'll shoot him right behind the shoulder like you do a deer. Your gut shooting him. He'll run 5 miles. His heart is actually in front of the shoulder, not behind the shoulder like on a deer. It's almost in the front of the chest. Because he's a runner and he's a fighter, and his heart's up front instead of being a deer, which is a runner. It's further back to get bigger lung capacity. A hog fights, and so his heart's bigger and in a bigger, different place. So really familiarize yourself with anatomy, and hit them behind the ear. They'll drop poleaxe. I've dropped them with a round ball before several times, but you got to place your shot. So learn the anatomy. That's the thing. That's the key. Learn the anatomy. and then a conical ball should penetrate just fine as long as you're at reasonably close range, like 25 yards, 20 yards, something like that. Briar Smoke, thank you very much. There's going to be more of that coming up. Marcus, good evening. Oh, now hold on, common sense. Karen went to Blackie can make one. Make one what? Making a muzzleloader convert? Been a long time since I did gunsmithing. I ain't got the tools no more. Hoss, thank you very much. T-Boy, that's true. You'd be amazed when we used to do living history a lot. We do a week-long rendezvous. And I remember one year that the high for the whole week was like 46. It stayed around 30, 32 to 45. That was it. And then at night, it dropped down into the low 20s, even sometimes. One morning, it was like 19. And we camped out in that, we were in a big wall tent, but we didn't have any stove in the tent. So you came out and you sat by a campfire. And then you just went in there and piled up with enough blankets and stuff. And we were part of a big group that did this. We were in there a week. And when we came home, and of course, we'd left the central heat and air running at the house because we had pets, and my sister was coming in to feed the pets, so we didn't worry about it. When we walked in the house, it felt like it was 110 in the house. I mean, we almost instantly burst into a sweat. We were burning up. And I said, good God, what'd you leave the heater set to? And it was set to 65. But we were so used to being in the 30s and the 40s by that point. We had adapted to it where we were halfway warm. We walked into that big temperature change and we were just sweating. I remember my wife saying, open the damn windows. She went and got in a hot shower right quick and then came in and opened all the windows, to let the heat out of the house because she was just dying, laying on the bed talking about, I'm about to burn up. Turn the air conditioner on. Because you just get acclimated after a while. Gray Wolf, correct. The Lyman Great Plains, which is created by Inner Arms, I think it's the company today, should be interchangeable. Charles, Blackie, what do you think of the Savage 64-22 rifle? Savages were always decent guns. They were meant to be a good working man's gun. That it functioned well, was accurate, shot well. It just wasn't made with fancy wood, and it wasn't made pretty. It was made functional. Ease of manufacture to keep the price down. But having said that, I don't know specifically the 64 right off the top of my head. But I can tell you that quite a few Savages I've had over my life were decent guns. They shot well. They were rugged and reliable. So I think it'd probably be a decent gun, depending. We'd have to actually look at the gun to look at details. But just off the top of my head, yeah, it should be decent. Choir Boy, good evening, sir. How you doing? Hope your dad's doing well. Frank, do you put cap rakes in your percussion revolvers? No, I do not. What I do is I go and I dehorn. If you go look at my playlist, I talk about cap jams and go in depth about how to dehorn and stuff like that. I take the cut on the hammer face and I round it to keep it from grabbing and sucking caps. I do several little tips and tricks to reduce it greatly. And I don't have cap jams that often. It's kind of rare for me to have a cap jam now. And if you'll look at my playlist where I'm talking about cap jams and stuff like that, I'll show you all the tips and tricks I do for mine. And it really makes a difference for me. The biggest thing that will help is changing out the dang nipples. because the nipples out of the modern guns, both Uberti and Pieta, especially anything that's been made since COVID came out, the opening inside the flash hole, inside the bottom of the percussion thing where it's inside the chamber, is too big, and it lets too much pressure blow back, and it just pulverizes caps. And when I shot the Dragoon the other day, and I put the video over on to Rumble, I was only shooting a 30 grain charge in that Dragoon, and you'd pull the trigger and the cats would just disintegrate. They were just giblets, you know, and that told me right there that the opening is way too big, way too much back pressure coming through. And so I've ordered a set of replacement nipples to put on it, because I like Tresco's, because they have that smaller Orbis in it. I don't necessarily, I've had the more expensive slick shots, but the Tresco's do just fine for me. True, Grey Wolf. We have the same thing here in the South, because it'll hit like 60 degrees at the beginning of fall, and all the women are coming in all bundled up like an Eskimo, going, "Oh my God, it's so cold, I'm freezing, oh my God." These are the same women in March that'll be running around in flip-flops, Daisy Duke shorts, a little tube top, going, "Oh, it's summer, it's summer." You know, it's the same temperature it was 3 months ago when you were freezing. It's because we were coming off the heat of summer. And now they've acclimated to cold, and now, oh, it's close enough. It's close enough. Stephen, good evening. Jay's modern, exactly. If you acclimate, especially if you do a job in everyday life where you're outside a lot. I had a really good friend of mine that he worked for a cable company, and so he was going around working on TV cables and internet and all that. So he was outside all the time. He didn't matter if it was raining, snow, sleet, it didn't matter. He's out there. And so to him, he was acclimated to it. You know, as the season changed, so was he. And he didn't even run air conditioner in a truck. He just rolled the windows down. You know, why waste? I'm used to it. And once you get acclimated, it's amazing how comfortable you can be at low temperatures. Santiago, good evening. Briar smoke, yeah, a lot of the Savage Axis rifles are real accurate. When I was selling rifles at Walmart, the Savages were some of our best sellers. You know, again, it's a rock solid, reliable gun. It just wasn't meant to be pretty. But if you didn't have a lot of money to spend and you needed a deer rifle, it was a very good choice. Now, they had those Savage 110s and stuff that were pretty. I mean, they had real nice wood on them and everything else, but they charged more for that. So, Lewis Ward, good evening. Sports Mobile 83, good evening. Santiago, do you have an effective way to get rust off of an old shotgun? I have an old H&R 12 gauge single. There are several ways to do it. The simplest way that I'll tell you to do it is you can simply take and wet it down with, I like 3-in-1 machine oil. Wet down the rusty area, because you probably got light surface rust. Soak it down, put a paper towel around it, and soak the paper towel. Leave it overnight. Come back the next day and take really fine steel wool and just real light. Don't bear down, but just real light. And a lot of that rust will just let go. If it's not pitted, a lot of that surface rust will just come off. And like I said, don't bear down. Just do it real light. Take the surface off of it. When like 90% of it's gone, shift over to an old sock or something. Turn it inside out so the fuzzy side stay outside. And bear down with your hand and buff it. And a lot of that stuff will just come off. Believe it or not, I used to boil guns, a handgun or a receiver that was rusty. I had a pot and I had a electric, setup on it. and I would put it on there, and I'd put it in a low boiling water and let it boil 3 or 4 hours. And it would convert that rust from red rust to black oxide, and I'd buff it smooth, and it looked like finish. It looked like old bluing. So it was a trick I did back in the day that worked really well. Shane, good evening. Sports Mobile. Blackie, do you know of another source besides Numerich for Savage 22-410 early model parts? I do not. I'm sorry. Brownells, contact them. A lot of times they know people that you and I wouldn't know, and know who is an expert on something. Contact Brownells, which is brown. The word brown, Nells. Brownells. It's a gunsmith supply. Get somebody on the phone and tell them you've got one of these old guns, and do they know anybody in all the gunsmiths that they deal with that might possibly have parts of that gun or specialize in them old Savages? And that might be a backdoor way into finding somebody that you never know any other way that may be somebody you really want to contact. And hopefully they've got a couple of old Savages that they're cutting up for parts, so to speak, and you can get in somewhere. Oh, cool. Savage 99 is a very cool looking rifle. You look at it and you think something modern, don't you? And yet that's such an old design. That Savage 99 is actually a very nice rifle. Kevin, well, welcome to the party. Well, Justin, thank you for dropping in, and tell Pink I said hello. Yeah, Gordon. I've had family members that did that too. You go into a closet and they would stand, the butt stocks was up because that they wanted oil to come away from the breech. That actually comes from the old muzzleloading days, where they'd store one and it'd run down and it'd foul up a flintlock, or it'd foul up at the breech, and you go to load it with loose powder and all the oil would be at the breech. So they either stored it horizontal or you stored it where the muzzle was down. And I can remember a distant family member that when we walked into his closet one time, he had a big walk-in closet. On this wall was all the guns, muzzle down. He had a wall rack for it, for his 30-30s and his 270s and everything else. Sports Mobile 83, good luck. Twister, hello. Kevin, hello to Greensboro, North Carolina. Y'all gonna be getting some cold, I believe, out of this. That stuff that passed us should be heading your way now. You know, the thing you see in all the movies of they come into the cabin, and up over the fireplace they've got two pegs and the old Kentucky rifle hanging up there. Man, that looks cool, don't it? Great way to dry out and crack a stock. And all that heat coming off that fireplace, drying out that stock. That's a great way to run a gun. And I can remember old timers that talked about they wouldn't bring a gun in the house. There was a house gun, but like the deer gun, the whatever gun, it stayed in the barn. There'd be a lockup place in the barn that they'd put those because they were afraid you'd bring them in the house and they'd get hot and cold and hot and cold and they'd warp. And so they wanted to keep them outside to the end of season, and then they'd bring them in the house and store them during the summer, and they'd bring them back out, side them in, make sure everything was good, and they would stay out there in the boat barn or the horse barn or where stored in the truck in the back window of the truck all season because they didn't want it to be coming in and out of the house. Oh, yeah, Kevin Munson, that ought to be fun. A hammock hang up there in Virginia. Yeah, Gray Wolf, they were over. My granddaddy had a Winchester 97 trench gun that was up over the cabin door. And I asked him about it. I said, why you put it up there? He said, son, you can have a group of people coming down the street screaming for your blood. You step out on the front porch and you jack a shell into a 12 gauge. Ain't nothing but good Christians in the front row singing, shall we gather at the river? And they got a prayer meeting to go to. And the guy in the back may still want to fight, but that front row's got someplace else to be. Yeah, G, that was one of the things when scopes started. I started seeing scopes that weren't common around the guys I was around because they were old guys and didn't have a lot of money. And, they fought World War One, World War Two and stuff with iron sights. So they kind of knew sights. Scopes were kind of frail and flimsy things. But they did that. They didn't want to bring them in and out. They're afraid they'd fog up. They'd leave them in the truck. Leave the gun with the scope on in the truck, behind the seat or something like that. All those old 68 Chevys and stuff, the gas tank was behind the seat. And so you would tip the seat forward and the inside of the seat was kind of hollow. And they had pierced through the wire at the top of the seat and leave two loops hanging down where they could slide a gun inside of a gun sleeve in there. When they close the door or close the seat back, it'd be trapped in that hollow spot between the seat and that gas tank. But it wouldn't rattle because it'd have a gun sleeve on it. And a lot of them had tip the seat up, unzip, and pull out their rifles. So they thought that was safer. And it didn't bounce around as much on dirt roads as it did up on that rack bouncing. Some of them dirt roads was waffle board like crazy, and it'd shake you to the bone. Them old wore out farm trucks, they didn't have no suspension. Changing shocks, what are you talking about, boy? Chad, I hear you. Hope you stay warm. Yeah, Gray Wolf, the old saddleback seat covers, they had that gun sleeve went under your knees right there in the front, real handy. Driving in a Maytag wash machine. Yeah. I rode, I think we were going to get pecans one time, and the bench seat had give up the ghost. And so on the passenger side, it was nothing but springs. All the padding was gone. And so they'd just taken a Coca-Cola crate, turned it upside down, and wedged it into the springs. And this is about like a 1953 Ford F-150 over on that bench seat. So you're sitting on that crate, and there wasn't no seat belts or nothing. And you're going down the dirt road, and it's like, you're just bouncing. Your hat's just doing like that. You're bouncing all the time. Oh, yeah. Sitting there holding on to the dash, and it just vibrating you so bad your feet are bouncing off the floor. A little bit of kid, Of course, he's going to drive 60 miles an hour down that dirt wash road. Unless you hit something, he's going to be there in 10 minutes. Yes, the fourth one is the trigger stir engaging. So first click is the hand going forward. Second click is the bolt coming down and the cylinder rotating. Third click is the bolt locking into place. Fourth click is the trigger locking into place, the trigger stir locking in place. And it doesn't always click. It isn't that loud. It depends on the steel and a lot of other stuff and just how strong the springs are. Gray Wolf, yeah, 3/4 ton, extra leaves in the back. Yeah. We saw a lot, military, we're getting rid of the old military trucks. So the old World War II Dodge ammo carriers and things like that, which was just like a 3/4 ton pickup with steel fenders that you could hit with a bullet and it'd probably ricochet. And got like 3 miles to the gallon. They were ridiculously gas suckers, but they were no suspension. Half of them had some sort of doodaddy on it where it was some sort of PTO or whatever, where it'd been a military truck and they'd bought it surplus, for cheap. And didn't know anybody right off the top of my head that had a Jeep. I always wanted to drive an Army Jeep when I was a kid. I thought, man, that'd be so cool. You see them in all the movies and everything. No, but, like I learned, the first Army truck I drove was about a 1950s deuce and a half. And it was no different than starting my daddy's 18-wheeler. I mean, you got in, you turned the key, or you turned the thing, didn't have a key, you turned it, and waiting for the air to come up. And then when that went off, it meant you had enough air, and then you punched the button in. You had to put the little T-bar in, the manual choke-like arm that you turned off the fuel. Had to push that in. You pushed your button in, it cranked up. Had the little flapper up on top of the thing. It was butterflying it. It had the wood bed on it. Didn't have any cover hoops or nothing like that. I can still hear that thing. It seemed like it would take forever for that thing to shut up so you could crank it. And then half the time they didn't have brakes. You always had to figure out, does it have brakes or not? And it was a church thing. We'd gone to somebody's farm doing something, and they needed to move that truck because it was where the activity was supposed to be, and somebody had inadvertently left it there. And so the preacher had asked, the lady who's on the farm, her husband was the one kind of putting it on. There's a bunch of us youth, and he was saying, can we move the truck? And she said, yeah. And of course, the preacher had never driven anything big like that. And I said, I can. And he looked at me and said, you can? I said, yeah, Daddy taught me how to drive on an 18-wheeler. I can drive that. And so he got up and stood on the running board and watched me climb up in it. And, he's leaning in the window and watched me, and I cranked it up and, disengaged everything, moved it about 75 feet, pulled it up beside the barn and turned it off like I'd done it 100 times. It ain't hard to figure out once the average soldier knew how to ride it. So I guess an average 10-year-old can drive it, just don't get in a hurry. Yeah, like 3 gallons to a mile. Oh, I had a good friend of mine that he had a gun shop here local, and we called him Scout. And he had 3 deuce and a halves that he'd got, and he'd restored one, and the second one ran and everything worked. It just looked rough. And he said, I'll sell you that deuce and a half for $1,500. And I thought about it for about that long. And I went, no, that's okay. He said, well, it's a 1960 whatever, deuce and a half truck. It's got the GM engine in it that'll run off of just about anything. You use motor oil in it, add a little water to it, and it'll run on it. And wanted me to get that thing. And I thought about it, and I said, how much it'd cost to fill that tank up just one time? I didn't have that kind of money. Would it have been great? Oh, it'd been awesome. But you got to have leisure money to have that kind of toy, because them things do not get fuel economy at all. 7-to-1 compression. They would run on stagnant water, kerosene, trans fluid, or gas. Yeah, they'd run off everything. I think there's 11 different fuels they'd run off of. Old war wagons. True. Bryersman, that was the thing. A lot of the farm trucks, they would always leave weight in the back of them to keep them springs from getting froze in place. because if there's nothing in it, it'd bow all the way up, and the spring was tight, and it'd freeze, it'd rust up, and you go to load the thing down, it gave it all kinds of problems. Marcus, the ones that I have seen have been decent quality, even the ones made in China, because the American company was the one doing the quality control on them. Anything made in the last 5 years, I can't speak to. But I would look around thrift shops, flea market, stuff like that. Often you can pick up old hickory knives for $3 to $5. You know, I picked up several over the years for under $5 because they'd be laying in a junk box or whatever. Normally dull as butter because somebody didn't know how to sharpen a knife, and they'd be able to pick you up one of the American made ones. Oh yeah, Gray Wolf, that would wake you up, wouldn't it? Yeah, Jay Modern, I'm same way. China can make anything we do. It's do they want to? And it's what's the quality going to be? If you go, not anymore, China's collapsing, but let's say 5 years ago, you could go to China and say, I want this knife, I want this steel, this blade, I want to duplicate this, and I want my cost to be $100 each. You get a state-of-the-art knife as good as anything you can make in the U.S. But they walk over with that same design and say, I want this, but I want my cost to be $35 each. You're going to get a piece of crap. You know, or it's a okay blade and a lot of crappy everything else. It's, you know, that's the bottom line. I have a good friend that he collects knives. And you see something like a Spyderco or something like that, and then send them to China to manufacture them. And they claim that they're knockoffs. They're not. They're overruns. And what it is you go to the factory and you say, I need 5,000 whatevers. Okay. They're not going to make 5,000. They're going to make 5,500. That way, when they get the total number, they got to coast the assembly line down to a stop. And so they make as many as they can. It's about 200 to 300, 400 max extra. And so then you, the guys, they deliver to you. They say, okay, here's your 5,000. And also, we've got 250. Do you want them at the same price? And if you say no, they would dump them on to Alibaba, but they wouldn't call it a Spyderco whatever. It's a JS23, you know, and it'd be in a Spyderco box. It'd be 1-to-1. It's the same knife. And it's either a cosmetic reject or it's one of the overruns. And that's the reason that the manufacturers don't complain too much about them, because they know there's only 150 or 200 of them out there. And it's overruns. And my friends specialized and how to find the big name knives. I mean, some of these knives were $700, $800. I wouldn't pay that for it, but it, you know, it was a tactical, cool looking knife that I wouldn't even tote in the woods because it ain't a knife that I would utilize in my kind of stuff, right? And yet he would find them on that, but you might have to go through 1,000 pages of knife, because they're not going to call it a super secret knife number 4 or whatever it is here in America. It'll be a J2ST whatever. And he'd pick them up at a dirt cheap price, check, make sure it was exactly what he thought it was, and he'd turn around and put them on in his collection. And if he bought more, he would put them on eBay and make money off of it, because he knew what he was looking at. I didn't, but they can make anything. But why do they want to put? They want the profit. They don't want the product. Oh, I believe it. Yeah, that's the whole thing, Jay Modern. It's getting the price cheap enough from China. And yeah, you can get it cheap enough, but you don't get the quality. If you want the quality, you got to pay for it. Yeah, their price is a lot lower than ours for the same quality, but you know, and I agree with you, Charles Martin. Go look at flea markets. You can find a lot of American-made stuff still floating around that's still recoverable and usable. Two orders, thanks. Thanks for pointing that out. Jim Survival, good evening. Yeah. I won't tell you what I paid for my custom forged 10-inch kukri. I hear you. Oh yeah, John Loudermilk. I'm sitting there working them. Yeah. Oh, Marcus. Yeah. The Rolex watches, etc. Anytime you're talking about this is a big collector's item, that's going to be the scam. We were at me and my wife were at a gun show, 20 years ago. Probably even longer than that. Might have been 30 years ago now. The Soviet Union had not broke up yet, so that'd be 91. And before that. And I'm looking at guns and stuff, and she liked a lot of the religious stuff. You know, they would sometimes show up at the tables and stuff. And she brought me over to show me this. And it was 3 pieces of brass, okay, about the size of that, okay, and they were hinged together to open up. And it looked like somebody had taken a nail and punched and made a pattern with the Virgin Mary standing right there. And the other one had a cross and Jesus on it. And the third one had something else. And it had brass wire like this, lacing the 3 pieces together. And the story was that this had been smuggled out of Russia. And it was an authentic Russian icon of whatever. And the guy wanted $900 for it. Now my wife wanted to show it to me. Well, I looked at it. I was nice to the guy, you know. And I told her, come on, let's go on. And she was kind of itching to get that. And I went, honey, let's talk about this a moment. Now, I didn't want to be mean to the guy or be rude to him. He's trying to sell a product. Okay. One, this looked like something I made. Okay. I'm not saying this wasn't legitimate. I'm not saying that this wasn't an authentic whatever. But Blackie is not paying $900 for 3 pieces of tin, a little bit of copper wire, unless I got some proof of what this is, you know, because it's not worth that to me. And it's got to have proof for me to go and invest that kind of money to think I'm going to make more money down the line. So knives, gear, whatever, you know, it's got to have something I can prove. Oh no, Michigan Silverback, yeah. Well, now that's one of the things about the case. Okay, I've got a good friend of mine that he collects case knives. He doesn't see any problem in dropping $300 for some rare case knife. Okay. And a couple of years ago, I went over to his place at Christmas, and he said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And we walked into the den, and he just got a wall of case knives. He's been collecting since he was a small boy. He's my age. And he handed me a two-blade trapper with bone handles. And I looked at it and he said, tell me what do you think this would cost? And I looked at him and I said, probably 70, 80 bucks. He said, no, those are $20 and they're made by Rough Rider. And I'm going to start collecting these because when people figure out what this is going to go up. And the reason I brought that up is there is no steel mill in the U.S. that makes the steel that Case needs to make pocket knives. So it's Chinese steel. Case is buying it and then doing their own quality control on it. And that's the reason when you go look at Case knives, there's a $75 Case knife and then there's $100 and something Case knife. That $100 and something Case knife is leftover steel from the American steel industry. They still got some that they've made knives out of. That's the reason it's so expensive compared to that one. That's a Chinese steel. It's been quality controlled, but it's a Chinese steel. The Rough Riders are basically identical to a Case, a modern Case, but they're $20 knives. And I've got my Case knife that I was given when I turned 16. I have my dad's Case knife and my granddaddy's Case pocket knife. Do you think I'm going to be carrying that in my pocket going through the swamps of Lower Alabama? Yeah, if I'm toting a knife that's other than my Swiss Army knife, it'll be a Rough Rider or something like that. If I want to carry an old 2 or 3 blade Stockman, it's going to be a Rough Rider or something like that. Because if I lose it, it's a decent knife. It works well, not very expensive. If I lose it, I'll go, Dad, nabbit, I lost it. I ain't losing any of those 3 family heirlooms. I ain't even going to attempt to carry them for that very reason. So it's a knife I can use, I can enjoy. And if it did, I ain't out $70, I'm out $20. So that's the reason. If you really like Case knives, take a look at for a carry knife. And if you're doing it for collecting, go collecting. But if you're looking for a knife just to carry in your pocket every day, take a look at Rough Rider. I think you'll be as amazed as I was by them. Russell, thoughts on Cornbread and the Pathfinder skillet? It actually works fairly well. The Pathfinder skillet's got a nice thick bottom. If you're talking about frying it, works well. If you're talking about baking in it, get high above the heat. Put it in, heat the pan up first, then add your cornbread dough, we'll call it. Pat it out flat or whatever, put the lid on, and then put it a little bit above the heat and make it very slow and let the heat in that bottom finish cooking it without burning it. It works fairly well for that. Haven't I done a video on making cornbread in a Pathfinder skillet? I seem to recall I filmed that at one point. Washburn Billy, welcome to the crowd. Yeah, Michigan Silverback. I have no issues with them. And for a working knife, yeah, for the price, yeah, I'll save that Case for a collector. And I want just a tote knife. Get that Rough Rider. It's a decent knife, and if I lose it, I'm not out so much. Gray Wolf. I've got one of those Sword peasants right over here in the thing. Somebody sent me from New Zealand. I'm Jay's Modern. Yeah, I'm confident because I've carried one daily. I've used them for everything, and I'm confident that those knives are going to become collectible down the line. Especially that now everything is in China's kind of going haywire. And Germany is the other main source of steel. And I know several custom knife makers that get their stuff out of Germany. And now Germany is starting to struggle to get their steel manufactured. So we may have a couple of years there where we're going to be waiting for an American company to fire back up and start making the proper steels for knives here in the U.S. It'll kill. What's the best steel? I will say that I have an ice-tempered German blade that's hard to beat. But what's the best steel? The best steel, you have to answer, what's the job? Now, for me, my old WC knife prototype is 01 tool steel. And I requested that because I know exactly how that works in the field. I know how to sharpen it, maintain it. Yes, it can rust. It's not easy to rust, but it can if I don't take care of it. On the other hand, AEBL, some of the best steel I've ever seen. It's kind of spooky how sharp you can get that thing. And it's a form of stainless. It doesn't rust. And yet it holds an edge. It cuts well. And yet it's very easy to sharpen. It's like the breaking of all the rules. So if you just said pick one steel and it has to be the only, it'll be a William Collins AEBL knife. Because of that, that's the best steel to me is AEBL. But there's only like 4 people in the world that have figured out AEBL, and William Collins is one of them. Kevin, yeah, you saw a bushcrafter toting around a Hexclad skillet. Hey, if he wants to pack it, go ahead. I don't know how that stuff is going to work on a fire, though, because if you use common sense, yeah. But here's the thing. A lot of, not just Hexclads is a metal idea to have protrusions that are then filled with a surface that's Teflon or whatever non-stick. But they tell you don't take that non-stick surface over 500 degrees because it turns toxic. It gives off. It gasifies. Well, a campfire can be well over 500 degrees. You can get 1,800 degrees out of hot coals. Pretty easy with a little bit of a breeze. And so I don't know if that's the best choice of carrying something like that out to camp on fire. If you use common sense and keep your coals out of the thing and kind of keep a modest heat, yeah, it probably work well. But at the same time, you can melt a pot. I've seen thin aluminum skillets taken to camp before and melted because they put them on hot coal and there was a little bit of a wind blowing and those coals were fanning and getting hotter and hotter. And I've seen a frying pan melt a hole in it before. So. Russell, that actually sounds pretty good. You had cornmeal and flour mix, yeah. Oh yeah, it'll kill. Some of them Pakistani knives, they are the heat treated way too hard, or they're dead soft. It just depends on what the guy felt like doing that day. Drew B, yeah, I've heard about Mike Beckett at Goons Gun Works. He does a really good job from everything I've heard. Okay, Marcus, it's at Blackie. I want to replace the handles. What do you suggest? I don't want to use wood. On what? I'm missing what you're putting the handles on. It'll kill. Anybody else seen a 22 caliber black powder rifle? I vaguely recall that there was some came in back in the 80s because North American's Freedom gun, that little bitty small revolver, they made a 22 long rifle black powder gun at one point. Had a little bitty mold to make the bullet, and you had a rammer and you could load it. And somewhere along that line, I remember somebody talking about a black powder 22 caliber rifle, but I don't recall ever holding or handling one other than that. Tim Pierce, sounds about right. The Rough Rider 304 work knife. Not familiar with the model, but Rough Rider, I've got several. I don't think I got one right here in front of me at the moment. In my little under the monitor, I keep several little knives to grab real quick. Here's another one you probably never heard of. It's called a saber. S-A-B-R-E. S-A-B-R-E. And were made in Japan. They were made in several places, and it was a construction package that after World War II, we were trying to get the industries going again in Japan. And so they gave them these pocket knife, different types of pocket knives, a package like the necessary technical stuff to create. And these were the cheap knives you'd get at the dollar store and stuff like that. This is a saber, 3-blade Stockman, high carbon steel blades. They're not a high desirable collectible, but they hold an edge really, really well. And by modern standards, this would be a really expensive knife. But you can a lot of times find them on Amazon for $15, $20. And I got this one out of a toolbox. I inherited some tools, and a lot of these became toolbox. This was the fishing knife, because you'd buy it at the fishing tackle place, or you buy it at the auto parts place or whatever, and it was the cheap knife to keep that good case knife and good. This was the cheap knife, and yet they're really good knives, and they're sabers. And I mean, this one's probably 60 years old, and it's still got walk and talk on it. So I've collected like 5 or 6 models of the sabers of Japan, and I've collected one or two of each, and I like them. Very good knife. Oh, okay, Marcus, on an old hickory knife. Well, if you're not wanting to use wood, you can, of course, use micarta. Is really good and easy to work with. You could also use bone. If you look at, I think it was called Texas Knife Maker Supply. And sometimes you could also get them through Atlanta Cutlery. They'd sell blanks, which was just blanks of wood that you would glue and shape epoxy onto the knife and then sand it, etc. When I've rehandled one a couple of times, what I've done was I would take one of the handles, put it on the far side. So this is the tang. I'd put it on the far side, get it all centered up, and I would trace all the way around it. And I would mark the holes. And then I would take and put that one and the other one together, clamp them, drill the holes all the way through it, cut off the excess all the way around, leaving a little bit. And then I'd put it up there and fit it and made sure everything lined up correctly. And then I'd epoxy it, put it, clamp it real good. And then once it was well and truly there, then I would shape the handle and put the pins in. And that way it was all one piece and didn't ever come loose. I've done a couple of kitchen knives that way. I played around doing crash carta, which I was taking old blue jeans that weren't no good, cutting them up into big things, and then using epoxy and just layering them up and make blocks, and cutting, shaping, making machete handles, and stuff like that out of them. They work well. Kevin, what was meant to be one of the first gentleman's knives? Probably the Barlow from the 1600s. Yep, briar smoke, exactly. Granddaddy Barlow, that's what my granddaddy carried it for. And like I pointed out, it's exactly the same size as one of the Moras as far as length. It's like a folding Mora. I'm not sure, Randy T, about the rifle. Not sure. Yeah. Cherokee Twilight. Blackie, do you own a Puco? I do not have a Puco at this time. I played with one several years ago for a short amount of time, but I do not have one at this time. Yeah, John Loudermilk, if you get one that wants to rust, I put gun bluing on them. And this is not one of the sabers. This is one of the, I think, Camp Kings, right? And what I would do when I was a kid, and I'd have the cheaper knives, is I'd take them and I'd take a little bit of steel wool, and then I'd put gun bluing on them. That took care of a lot of the rusting, because all rust is red oxide and bluing is black oxide. So, and I've carried this one several times, and it hadn't rusted. It's still shiny, but it has something to do with the steel. It's what's the quality of the steel? What are the conditions? How much salt are you sweating out? You know, I had a coworker years ago. I think that guy was walking acid, because anything metal you put on him rusted or disintegrated in fairly short order. And he talked about when he was in the Marine Corps, he had 5 sets of dog tags where the chain around his neck had rusted out. That's supposed to be stainless steel. And yet he showed me one. He brought it in. It was rusty as all get out. Looked like it'd been in a landfill for 10 years. You know, he was one of them that secreted salt, and he just seemed to be, you know, old timer pocket knife. Would last maybe 6 months, and then it would just have hunks missing out of the blade where it'd rust in his pocket. You know, he was just one of them guys. Yeah, yellow perch fan. Okay. Jay Motter, have you ever done any forging? I have played with it. I did blacksmithing and a little bit of stuff, and I had at one point got the idea I wanted to do casting, and I wanted to make a muzzleloader from the ground up, every part, cast the trigger guard, everything. I had watched a documentary about Colonial Williamsburg back in the 1960s, and Wallace Gusler and a gun he built, and I wanted to duplicate that. But I played around with a blacksmith, but I am no blacksmith. I have a working knowledge enough to be dangerous, and that's about it. But I can make little things that I would need, like, you know, firearms, S hooks, basic stuff like that. I can do that, but I haven't got any kind of real experience. I wouldn't call myself that. Will Rowell, what was the length of the original Kep art design? I believe they said it was like a 5-inch blade, because the one that's in the museum, I think, is like a 4 3/4, but they figure it's been worn down because he would resharpen it so much, because he did so much with the tip boring and stuff like that. He would resharpen it. And so it appears to be the same blade that had been talked about earlier or photographed years before, but he simply wore it and used it so much he wore it down. So I'd say somewhere around 5 inches. It'll kill. No, it shouldn't. The heat treat would not be softened up by putting it in the vinegar. Sorry. Oh yeah, 2020. Those Imperials, yeah. I remember the old Imperial Boy Scout knife. You know, my daddy carried a queen steel 3-blade stock, a little small one in his pocket for years and years and years. Most of my life, I remember if he brought out that pocket knife, that was it. Tony York, good evening. Max Payne, good evening. Jay Modern, casting the parts like the trigger guard, the butt plate, the nose cap, finials, side plates, those parts could be cast. But all the working parts like the frizzen and the lock and the barrel and all were blacksmith type made, forged. It'll kill the 1965 Western Bowie, the Raider Bowie, that the nickname that got, where they were selling them in the PX in Vietnam, and Force Recon went to carrying those buoys. It's a light machete is what they did, and there was some famous fight where they got overrun and they went to hacking with those knives, and it was so bad that whenever they went to the negotiation table, they complained about the inhuman use, and they threw one of the knives on the table, saying that the Americans were using these inhuman weapons, and it was one of those knives. Great Western Bowie. Grouch, who was Force Recon back then, he's got his Great Western Bowie that he bought from the PX in Vietnam and carried in combat. Yeah, Grey Wolf, they would put bears around and pour the pewter in there for the cap like that, for the nose caps. Russell, one of the reasons I paint mine with barbecue paint is to make it very easy to get the soot off of them. It just wipes off that paint. But I find quite often that the soot will actually, it seems like it just clings like grease or something to stainless steel or aluminum. I haven't had a titanium pot that I think about it right now that would do it. But I paint mine with black stove barbecue paint, and it makes it where I can just wipe it off with a paper towel. So I hope that helps. Ryan Ball, hello. Aaron, cool. Pathfinder makes a good knife. Briar Smoke, yes it is, and we're going out tomorrow morning. We're doing it always. We're going to do a hunting scout on his land. We're looking for fresh sign to hopefully fairly soon, because we're running out of time. We want to try to get a deer so we can do a deer on his channel. Oh, Jonathan Gable, cool. Yeah, I had that Colonial Williamsburg on VHS tape. And I think I near about wore it out watching it for the details. Wallace Gutzler was the gunsmith. I even knew the name of the he was on the NBC Nightly News. The guy who's the narrator of that video started with a B, but he was on the NBC Nightly News for years as one of the anchors, and he was the narrator of that show. Bear, yeah, the VC whining about Bowie knives is like the Germans whining about trench guns. It was true. Blackie, do you know anything about the Thompson Center White Mountain carbine? I know it. I know what you're talking about, and that's about all I can tell you right off the top of the head. I haven't had one or shot one, but I know that the Thompson Center use good locks and fairly rugged and reliable guns, and usually very accurate. So. Okay, Gordon, where do I find one of the One Wind half shelters that you used in the video a couple of weeks ago? Go to the One Wind Outdoors website, click on shelters, and scroll down, and you'll see it. It'll be set up as that half pyramid, and when you click on it, there'll be a picture where it shows another one zipped to it because the two of them will zip together to make like an awning out in front. So that's where it's at. Craig, Blackie, what are the hunting seasons like in your state, the dates? Archery season normally starts somewhere in the middle of October, and gun deer season goes usually into the end of January. And it starts in November. So you get November, December, January is gun deer, and you've got another month where you can do it with archery. So 4 months out of the year. And I don't know if they've changed it this year. I think that it even went into the early part of February for muzzleloaders. So you get like quite a bit. And we have you're allowed 3 bucks. One of the bucks must be more than 6 point. They don't come in any order, but you can have a doe a day every day, but you're limited to 3 bucks a year. And you can take a buck and a doe on the same day, but that you're only limited to 3 bucks a year, but you can have a doe a day. So we got a big deer herd in Alabama. And then when the deer's out, we have a huge hog herd. Please come and kill as many of them as you want. So you can hunt something every month of the year in Alabama. Gordon, I haven't found the bug net on there yet. It may be something new they're bringing out. They were just throwing in the package when they sent it to me to try out. Oh, if it's a 50 caliber, I would start with 50 grains of powder and then ease up. Usually for a hunting load, you're going to be somewhere around 70 to 80 grains. Somewhere in there is usually going to be your best hunting load. A target load, start with 50. You know, if it's 50 caliber, start with 50. If it's a 60 caliber, start with 60. It's an old rule of thumb, and it seems to work very well for a starting load. And then go up a little bit, like 5 grains, until you find the sweet spot where the accuracy improves the best. David Brinkley, that's it. Yeah, I knew the last name started with a B, but David Brinkley. James Clement, thank you very much. Glad to do it. Anonymous, 257 Weatherby isn't overkill. No, it's decent caliber. It's right up there with old 7mm Mauser. Not Magnum, but 7mm. They were very close in power and performance. And very good for elk down game. You can shoot pronghorn. You can shoot white tails. You can shoot black tail. You can shoot muleys, even elk within reason. 257 Weatherby is a decent caliber. Yes, you can still find Kiss and Crane. You can still find the Boker tree brand. Okay, that's the name of it. Boker is who tree brand was a division of them. So if you go to Smoky Mountain Knife Works, I think you'll find what you're looking for there. And their online site, just Smoky Mountain Knife Works. If it's got an edge, they probably got it. Yeah, Craig, a lot of states have very limited time. Rebecca, welcome. Thanks for checking in. That was the thing I used to pick at Dan Lutz about him being up there in Ohio. He said that how much bigger their deer are. Excuse me. How much bigger their deer are than they are in Alabama. I said, yeah, but yours are stupid as a post. You only have a couple of days for a hunting season because your deer walk out in broad daylight in the middle of a cornfield. You know, they're big, but they're dumb as a post. And if you had a season as long as I had, you'd kill all of them in 2 years. So we got, our whitetails are smaller, but they're smart and they are very, very cunning. And so it's the people that go around, big money people that can afford to do nothing but hunt, you know. They consider the southern whitetail like the Cadillac because they are the most challenging to hunt. They're not the biggest, no, but they're the most challenging because they are very intelligent and they do adapt and they'll call you out in a heartbeat if you do anything wrong. And whereas a lot of the bigger deer in other places, you know, he's just a deer. He'll come walking out. We came out when we went to supper up there at one of the restaurants in Ohio when I went up to visit Dan. And when we came out in the parking lot, and it was right at twilight, and 30 yards from the front of the truck was this probably 300-pound whitetail standing out there in broad daylight with trucks running up and down the highway, sitting there grazing on some corn that was left where they had cleaned and cut and everything. A couple of old cobs that fell out, and he was sitting there gnawing on it, you know, in broad daylight with obvious humans within like 100 yards or less all the way around him. He was just standing there. Yeah, that's your deer. I'd go up there and try to use a slingshot. They're that dumb. Got to give them a fighting chance. Fish golf too. Hello. Rebecca, yeah. That right now with all this cold coming in, they're getting up and moving around. They'll end up in yards. They'll end up everywhere. You know, we used to go over here to when I was on the military base over here as a kid, and we're up on Hexclad, and that was the housing area, and you weren't allowed to hunt in the housing area. And the biggest deer on the base would be standing in the housing area in broad daylight because they knew they were safe there. Nobody can hunt them. And there were a lot of deer on Fort Rooker back then. I remember one year they took 600 bucks, just bucks, because you weren't allowed to shoot does. 600 bucks off that place in 1 year. So we have big deer herds down here as far as amount, not size deer, but amount. It'll kill, I hear you. Okay. If I want an all-around good woods knife I can process game with too and don't want to spend a lot, what should I look at? If you don't want to spend a lot, an all-around good woods knife, a 2-blade trapper. Like we was talking about earlier, if you want a pocket type knife, get a 2-blade trapper like from Rough Rider. Really good value for the thing, and those 2 blades were designed for a reason, cleaning game. You'll look at the spay blade, which is kind of the rounded end one. It does perfect for getting underneath the skin and skinning. It just opens them up like a zipper. The point one is for piercing in and doing the cuts. The other one is for slicing through the meat. And I have cleaned a lot of deer with a 2-blade Stockman. Now, mine were by other names. It may have been old timer, it may have been whatever, but if I had a real limited budget and I wanted a pocket knife I could clean game with, a 2-blade Stockman, a 2-blade trapper would be my first choice, really, because I've got so much experience doing it. Aaron Morris, I'm in northern Alabama, and I'm wondering if elk from Kentucky will ever migrate down this way. I'm with you. I want to live long enough to see elk in Alabama. I've got a good friend that he fishes on the Tennessee River. And he sent me a picture from fishing and being in the Tennessee River. And on the Tennessee side, on the bank, was probably 50 elk standing there. Where they released into Kentucky and they'd migrated down. And so they do have some in Tennessee now, not enough to call it a hunting population yet, but there are some there. And Tennessee's a narrow state, north to south. And so I want to live long enough to see elk in Alabama. I've told the story before, but it was something that the true sadness really touched me in my grandfather, where he was talking about everything was gone in the woods. That when he was a boy, you had to carry a gun. There was things out there that would get you. You know, it wasn't just because you wanted to hunt. There were things out there that would get you, and so you had to carry guns. There were gators, and there was everything else. And then by the 1930s, 40s, 50s, there weren't. Everybody ate it because of the Great Depression and the problem with World War II and rationing, and country boys going to survive. And hey, them suckers taste good. And they had thinned everything down. And so in the late 50s, early 60s, when they went to trying to repopulate Alabama with a deer herd and everything, and it was the early 70s when I was hearing Granddaddy talk about it, so there's nothing left. And yet it's come back. In my lifetime, it's come back to where now we've got the deer herds. We've got alligator again. We've got armadillo showed up. I never saw armadillo until I was in high school, you know. The possums, the coons, the coyotes came in the 80s and 90s. Now we got pine wolves, which it's a hybrid, a coy dog. But when you take a look at it and tell me that's a puppy dog, no, it's a wolf. It just happens to be a coy. And we call them pine wolves down here. It's much bigger than a coyote. A coyote is about 30, 40 pounds. Some of these are 60, 70, 80, 100-pound dog I've seen. You know, and it looks more like a full-grown gray wolf, but it's just a hybrid down here. And all these things have come back, and I want to live long enough to see elk come back down here. That would just tickle me to death. Hopefully it'll happen next few years. Randy, when you're chatting with grouse, how do you keep your pipe lit? It's how much pressure you put when you tamp it. Okay. You load the pipe and you compress it down. And then you load a little bit more and you compress. And there's a certain resistance you're looking for. And that way when you light it and you pull the coal and you're inhaling it, pulls the coal down into those layers. So the bottom of it is smoldering. It don't have enough oxygen. The top of it is burning, you know. And so that's how you pull it down through it. If it's tapped well and you've got a little bit of ash on top, and you notice we picked up and you take your tamper and you make a little hole in the middle of the ash. That leaves a little air hole coming in. You can stop smoking the pipe for a minute and talk a minute, and it'll keep slowly smoldering so you can come back to it and it's still lit. Read the book by Rick Hacker. That's his name, Rick Hacker, on the pipe book, and it'll give you all the details you want to know about smoking a pipe. Types of tobaccos, everything else. It was the book in my era to read if you want to smoke a pipe. And I hope to get with Grouch next week and us do another video. Aaron, yeah, the black bear are moving north. We have them down here. Back in 93, I helped release with volunteers that helped release into the national forest over here some black bears. And they have populated real well, and they went down into Florida. It's much that they had to have a bear hunt in North Florida a couple of years ago. And they said, we're going to kill only 300 bears, and whenever that number's reached, we'll stop. They got all of them in one weekend. That's all the nuisance bears. That's the ones that are staying and raiding the Hardee's dumpster every night and stuff. These ain't wild staying at you. They're hanging around town. And so they got 300 bears in one weekend in a little over 24 hours. And that was the end of that. And we do not have a bear hunting season yet in Alabama, but they are getting to be enough. I want to see one in the wild. I found 2 tracks in the last 5 years. I found 2 tracks that I'm sure was a bear. And I've seen sign. In fact, me and Bear went on his land back 2 years ago, and there was a claw way up where something had been going after termites and stuff in a rotten tree that I'm pretty sure was a bear, but can't prove. I want to see one alive down here, but they are moving north, and if they can get across this plain that we're at down here and get just above Montgomery, they have the natural barrier of the Coosa, Tallapoosa, and Alabama River. If they get across that, that's the very tiny toe of the Smokies, right above Montgomery, Alabama, right there, Wetumpka, Alabama. And it's actually an impact crater from an ancient Earth impact. But you come across, it's a flat plain, and suddenly it does this, and you go into the hills. If they'll ever get across that barrier, there might as well be up in the Smokies. They'll take off and head north then. I'm sure you guys will have plenty of bear then. But down here, they're an open cattle country. And so thick woods, but it's mostly, rolling hills, valleys. It's not the stuff they want to really thrive in. And they've only figured out in the last 10 years by putting remote cameras on the bears and turning them loose how socially interactive bears are. They thought they were all loners. And we're finding out they actually travel in large communal groups that kind of migrate, from A to B, broken up, and then recongregate at places. And I hope to see them. Well, guys, that's 1 hour and 45 minutes. Think about time we call it quits for the night. Oh, wait a minute. Kodak, fun question for Blackie. If we're going into grizzly and brown bear country, which calibers in your arsenal would you take? 45 Colt. Definitely. I've got a sidearm in 45 Colt, and I got a carbine in 45 Colt. And it's a lever action 92 copy, which means it ain't gonna jam easy. And 45 Colt loaded right and everything will put a whomp on anything, and has been used to take any kind of game you ever want to talk about. I would not want to come up against a grizzly or a brown bear, but in what I've got right now, that'd be my choice, because I'd have a handgun and a rifle in it, and up close will do the job. Would I prefer something like a 30-06 or something like that? Yeah, if I had range. And yeah, I would prefer it. Or a 12 gauge. Good old 12 gauge with buck and slug would be a real good choice too. I've got one of those in pump. But that'd be my daily carry, would be a 45 long Colt on my hip for daily carry on that. And then if I had the option of carrying a long gun, maybe 30-06 or a 12 gauge, depending on what we're doing. Okay, guys, thank you very much for popping in. Thank you very much for all the comments. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all the support y'all give me on the channel. And there will be more videos coming up. And yes, there are going to be some gear reviews popping up all along, because I'm getting gear to give away at my gathering. Not everything's going to be given away at the gathering like that. Hoodie is going off tomorrow. It's being shipped off to Trinity. But we'll see. Guys, thank you very much. Y'all take care. Stay safe and stay warm. And I'll see you next week. Good night, guys.